The Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burst and Gary Capel.
Welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racing Podcast. Unfortunately, Stephen Molyneux couldn't join us this week, so we're joined by Gary Capewell, who has had his first return to the racecourse for Arrow this year. We'll be reviewing our most recent race at Wolverhampton, and then we'll be looking ahead to Chelmsford tomorrow and Doncaster on Saturday. So, hi, Gary.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Was it good to be back at Wolverhampton?
It was a little bit unusual because it was the first time I'd been on a racecourse when there was a race day on, at least since March of last year. No, March of last year. So it was, it's a long time since I've been on course, and it was a little bit surreal, to be honest, but it was great to be back. And I think it's something that we're quite guilty of a lot of the time in the racing industry. Those of us that are lucky enough to work with it, we take it a little bit for granted at times, or we used to do. And I think being away for quite so long meant that, I'm not sure what it was like when you first came back, but I was really excited about going, and which wouldn't always have said about going to Wolverhampton, I suppose, in the past, but it was great to be back, and great to get back into some sort of normality or routine, if you like.
Absolutely. And my first meeting back last year was at Bath. Again, not a racecourse I would associate with a lot of excitement. Certainly, I'd reserve that sort of emotion for places like Ascot and Cheltenham. But it's certainly very different. And of course, I don't think you've not experienced a racecourse yet without crowds, which is, going back to Wolverhampton with crowds was probably as weird for me as for you going racing, I have to say. It's and of course not all race courses are having the full quotient of crowds and so on. And I've just been having a Zoom call this morning about we've had a photographer's briefing for Epsom, and also talking about Royal Ascot. And there again, you've got different ideas, numbers of people going. So we're still very much not back to normal, I would say, actually. But anyway, good to have you back. And it'd be interesting now to hear your thoughts on the race, which was run by Mizuna, kind of a similar race to how she won there last year, really, although obviously she'd had the benefit of a run that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they didn't go particularly quickly early on definitely played into her hands a little bit, didn't it? Because I suppose the trip was a slight question mark, or perhaps her best form to date had come over slightly shorter. Pretty quickly, and it clearly suited Mizuna. I thought she was given a particularly good ride from Ross Orion, his first winner on the Shibet Arabia's first ride. He's riding particularly well on the thoroughbreds at the moment, and that confidence is perhaps being passed on to some of the horses that he rides. I thought he was, very, very clever. I presume, James was giving him the tactics to hopefully probably try and produce her as late as possible. And he and the stable companion, Nadal Shiva, who's obviously a little bit less experienced, they had a bit of a battle in the closing stages, and Mizuna just came out on top. Nadal Shiva in second. I don't think it'll be too long before he's in the winner's enclosure again. Decent seasonal return. He's got a very lightly race profile, hasn't he? He's only had, 3 career starts, so there will be definitely more to come from him. Farasar, perhaps a little bit inexperienced at a crucial stage, cost her, but again, it was a race, full of promise. Not quite a match for the front pair, but be interesting when I think she might step up further and trip a little bit more. G1 ran a cracking race on his first run for New Connections. C2 making his handicap debut. I'm sure that the Plum team will have been thrilled by his performance. And they pulled nicely clear of the remainder. Balkis, I thought, looked in need, fitness-wise, perhaps a touch for the run. I couldn't get that close to them, but I thought, she would probably tighten up for the run, and that's how Phil, likes to bring his horses along gradually throughout the course of the season, doesn't he? So I'm sure we'll see better from her. I noticed that she's entered at Doncaster on Saturday, so I'll perhaps touch on her a little bit more later, but I think she'll be suited by that step up in trip. Altabari, I'm not sure this was quite the grade for him just yet in his career. Obviously, he'd won a couple of times last year at the track in a slightly lower grade, and obviously, he too is entitled to improve for the outing. Jarhez took them along with Ortal. That pair dropped away quite tamely enough, I suppose, in the end. But I always think at Wolverhampton, I don't know if it always translates for the Arabians, but certainly for the thoroughbreds, it's a very difficult track to make all of the running at. So you can half put a line through both those efforts. And again, with Ortal's case, I definitely think that the run will definitely bring her forward. And Jarvis, I'm sure there'll be a plan further down the line with him. And Stonehenge, again, it's the first time we've seen the track for quite some time. I'm sure he will have improved for the run. And again, there'll be more suitable targets for him throughout the rest of the season. So I thought it was, for the grade, it was very, very competitive. The way that the race panned out definitely suited the winner. But there was certainly bits of promise from quite a few of those horses that finished in behind.
As you would expect, with a lot of them making their handicap debuts. And we'll move on now to the Albuston Beach 0-65 handicap, which is tomorrow at Chelmsford City. There again, we've got a couple of handicap debutants and some horses, basically a mix of horses who've met each other quite a lot, whether it be in maidens or in handicaps last season. So it's an interesting mix of form and quite difficult really to pick anyone with a convincing sort of winning profile. I think they've all got a bit of a chance here.
Yeah, he's kind of immediately drawn to the top weight, Al Simsound for Phil Connington and Dane O'Neill, a horse who, stepping up in trip, which I think will definitely suit him. He was third at Wolverhampton on his only start thus far. Obviously finished in front of a couple of opposing rivals. Sahis, who was fourth in that race, blinkers quickly removed off him. Heritage Valentino, again a horse that I think James has said already that one of the the main targets for this horse is a race in Belgium later on in the year, isn't it? And he's very much been brought along with that in mind, and it'll be a good chance for the young amateur rider Jamie Gamblin to get a little bit more experience as well. And then you've got the likes of Seraphim Forte and Zane's Hyperion and Gurko de Tunnel, who all ran in that same race at Bath just over a month ago, finishing third, fourth and fifth respectively. I think Zane's Hyperion last year shaped as though in a few races that he was ready to win. I think he will have improved a good bit for the outing at Bath, and I think I've noticed you've tipped him in the race card. And I think if I was having to make a selection in this race, he probably would be the one, because I think this is sort of going to be the ideal trip for him. Yes, he is still a maiden, but he's got we're beginning to put together a fairly consistent profile. And I think this probably looks a little bit more winnable than some of the races that he was placed in. So I'll be disappointed if he doesn't go close. We mentioned the two that obviously also ran in that race, Gurko de Tunnel. That was a personal best from what we've seen from him in this country, at least, wasn't it, on the most recent outing? And Seraphim Forte, again, I think the run will have brought him forward a little bit too. Still completed by Samawar too. Ran well on a couple of occasions last year. She may well improve for the run, perhaps, but she couldn't be completely ruled out because, again, she's got some form here in the past. So, yeah, interesting little contest. You can't put a line through any of them, I didn't think. But I did agree with you. If I was going to have to make a selection in the race, it would have been Zane's Hyperion.
Yeah, I mean, it took a fair amount of head scratching. I mean, it's interesting to see Pete's obviously building up quite a good relationship with Joey Haynes as a professional jockey with his horses. And he certainly seems to get on well with them. So, hopefully that's a relationship which will be fruitful throughout the year for them. We spoke earlier about obviously the Wolverhampton race, and 5 of those runners are slated to line up at Doncaster on Saturday. To be honest, I haven't had a tremendously long time to look at this race. Probably you haven't either.
No.
But just briefly, what are your thoughts on this?
I thought it was a bit of a minefield. To be perfectly honest, you've got the 6 Shadwell runners in there. Another couple one each for James and Phil as well. Peter Hammersley obviously running Altabari. I think the track will suit Altabari. Again, whether he's quite capable of winning in this grade, I think he's £3 out of the handicap, isn't he? The track will definitely suit Kayak down at the bottom, but again, he's a good bit out of the handicap as well. I thought this was a little bit of a nightmare, if I'm perfectly honest, trying to work out who was going to make it. It's interesting to see that that Dane O'Neill, who I suppose we often assume is the first choice in these type of races, is elected to ride Tufan, who'll be making his handicap debut, won't he, in this race? He finished third at Chelmsford on his final start last season. There's definitely more to come from this horse, but you go through the lineup and you can say the same about quite a few of the others. I mean, we haven't seen Jadail for a while, but I liked how he went through and won his race at Wolverhampton a couple of years ago, and I thought he ran well in the staying race on Dubai International Arabian Race Day a couple of years ago. So I think there's definitely more to come from her, rather, I should say. Farheart, well, it's a horse that's often promised more than we've seen thus far. It's interesting they're stepping her up in trip. Whether this will, I'm in two minds with her with the trip, I have to say, but the ability is definitely there. It's about time we saw it. Balkis, I think, will be suited by the step up in trip. It's interesting to see Daniel Muscat is booked to ride him. And the further you go down the list, you've got horses that have got bits and pieces of form. Thayer Athol will need to step up a good bit on what we saw, at Lingfield, but going into handicap company, that could easily be forthcoming. We mentioned G1 earlier on. I think he will be suited by this trip. And we know the likes of, Almonte are going to be fine at this trip as well. Obviously, he ran in this, or the equivalent race of this, when it was run over 2 miles a couple of years ago. Wasn't being too far in that bunch finish where Alcázar just got the better of Alfaris and Hal Kolar. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be completely, again, I know there's 11 of them, but again, there's bar the couple that are out of the weight, so I think may well struggle in this type of grade. I wasn't keen to put a pen, through any of them, to be perfectly honest.
No, it's certainly been difficult. I mean, one thing I would say about Tufan, when I did my stables tours, pre-season, James did say that although he felt he was a 1.25 mile horse, he did have this race in mind because he feels he settles well, and he should see out the trip. And I think probably out of all of them, he's probably got, if you take the Wanusa form strictly, as it is, he's probably got more class than a lot of these and the potential to go on with his racing. And obviously it's his handicap debut, but it's a big ask off top weight on your seasonal reappearance.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's related to a couple of horses that stayed certainly at least 1.25 miles. The Dam definitely stayed 1.25 miles and never actually ran over further than that, certainly in the UK at least anyway. So yeah, like you say, top weight on seasonal reappearance is never going to be easy, but it's always eye-catching when you assume that Dane's had the pick of the 6 Shadwell runners, that he's decided to go for this particular one. It'd be interesting to look at the strike rate in terms of how many times whether he gets the choice, whether he's sort of advised which one to go for. I'd love to know the strike rate. I'll have to have a look back at that kind of stat. But
certainly different here than it is in the UAE. So although he tends to be the second choice, he's got 2 Kahala Classics to his name. So
true.
Not being first choice jockey sometimes I think possibly plays to his advantages. Certainly over there anyway. But well, as you say, it would be interesting to have a look through. And obviously here, we all know that Jim's going to be at Epsom for the Derby.
Yeah, so obviously he'll be up to Doncaster, where I'm sure there'll be plenty of thoroughbred rides for him as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Tufan gets on. But like I said, it's such a trappy looking race, and I'm sure some of them are going to benefit greatly from what is quite a big, well, not a big step up in trip, but it is a step up in trip for the vast majority of the field, isn't it?
It certainly is. And I mean, obviously down the bottom, those two out of the handicap, they are actually two of the most suitable for this race. But it's, I think it's such a shame that Kayak, even though, it'd be hard to make a case for him from, nearly a stone out or just over a stone out of the handicap. It's a shame he hasn't had a run to get him straight for this, really. You think this is going to bring him on. Those two fillies of Phil's, they both look like they're going to need this kind of trip. So it'll be interesting to see, them both having run over 7 and then 10, this further step, whether it will improve them or whether they're, they maybe need more time.
Yeah, well, Kayak in particular, he's from a late developing family. I mean, his sire, Kaid, I can remember commentating on winning at Taunton at the age of 17 a few years ago. And his dam, Penny Black, ran well quite a few times in the Dubai International Arabian 7 furlong race on Dubai Day. And that bit of form at Wolverhampton last year at a fair price when he finished second behind Al Sabari. He's shaped on more than one occasion. There's plenty of ability there. Serena Brotherton clearly gets on well with this horse. It's just about sometimes channeling it in the right areas, but perhaps the lack of a recent run, you would say that is a potential negative, wouldn't you? All the best form has come after a run, so and there will be that this run is needed just to put him sort of spot on. And again, whether he's capable of winning in the 0 to 90 grade, I'm not just sure. It was a 0 to 75 to the one at was second in at Wolverhampton last season.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a big step up in company for him. But anyway, it looks set to be a really fascinating race, and hopefully, with any luck, you might be available to join us again to review it next week.
Should be able to.
Jolly good. And also next week we'll have our first visit to Newbury. We will be there for the Al Seafer Beach International Condition Stakes, which has been aimed up to 3 and 4-year-olds over 7 furlongs. And I believe you're commentating on that one as well, are you?
Yeah, that'll be my next visit on course. So yeah, looking forward to that. Not been to Newbury for the best part of 2 years now. So yeah, doing the next 2 Newburys, and I think there's a Windsor as well I'll be doing later on in the month too.
Well, it's great to have you back, Gary, and we'll look forward to speaking with you next week.
Thanks, Debbie. Speak then.
Cheers. Thanks, Gary.